Hello boys and girls, welcome to the Math Club. In this video, we're talking about parallel and perpendicular lines. The key point here says lines that are parallel have the same gradient. We talked about this before and we said parallel lines have the same gradient. Now if we take a look at the graph here, if we want to find the gradient for these lines, we will move one positive x and then we will try to go back to the line, so positive 2. Same idea with the other line. If we moved one positive x and we try to go back to the line, it's positive 2. So parallel lines have the same gradient. Now let's go to another key point and understand the rules of perpendicular lines. The key point here says when two lines are perpendicular, the product of their gradients is negative 1. Now, to understand this more, we must see an equation and see what does that mean. Let me show you a question and I'll explain more on the question. Question 9. Write the gradient of a line perpendicular to these lines. Before we start, let me explain the meaning of the key point. Now we said if we have two lines and they are perpendicular, it means the product of their gradients, or multiplying of the gradients, equals negative 1. Now let me show you an example and we will understand it more. Now if I have this equation here, y equals negative 3 x plus 5, and another equation which is y equals 1 over 3 x minus 7. If we take a look at the two gradients, this gradient and this gradient, if we take them and multiply them by each other, 1 over 3 equals, when we multiply these by each other, so we multiply negative 3 by 1, it's going to be negative 3 divided by 3 equals negative 1. So what does that mean? It means when you multiply the gradients together of these two lines, the answer will be negative 1, as you can see. Now, if this happens, if the product of multiplying the gradients by themselves equals negative 1, it means the lines are perpendicular. This is the meaning of the key point. Now let me show you another way of getting the gradient of a line perpendicular to another line. Let me remove these first. Okay. Now let me show you an example using one of the questions here. Let's take a look at this line first. Y equals 2x negative 1. Now let's take it down, 2x negative 1. Let's put it here. Sorry. Y equals 2x negative 1. Now to find the gradient of a line parallel to this one, we said that we use the same gradient. Now if we're looking for a parallel line, it means we're going to use the same gradient. And the gradient here is 2. So the line will be, the line parallel to this one is 2x plus 10, for example. And how do I know it's parallel? Because I'm using the same gradient. With perpendicular lines, it's not the same. With perpendicular lines, you have to use a gradient that when you multiply it by the old gradient, you get negative 1. Now, how do you do this in an easier way? You take the gradient of the line, put it here. It's 2, right? Or plus 2. We write plus 2 here. Good. Now, because this one is plus, let me move it. Now, I want to change this. 2 or plus 2 is always divided by 1 as a number. Now, what do? I want to change this into a gradient of a line that is perpendicular to this one. The first thing I do, because it's plus, I will write minus. That's the first step. And then I will take the number below and put it on top. It's going to be 1. I'll make a fraction. I'll take the number on top and put it below, and it's going to be like this. So the answer will be -1/2. This is the answer. So what did I do? Because it's positive, I made it negative. That's the first step I do. And if it's negative, I will make it positive. So the first thing, I make the opposite sign. That's the first step of finding a gradient of a line which is perpendicular to the line in the question. First step, change the sign. Second step, if it's a whole number or a real number, I will write 1 underneath it, and then I'll take the one in the bottom and make it on top, and then take the one on top and make it on the bottom. Now, this idea, or in this way, I found the gradient of a line perpendicular to the old line. So the gradient will be -1/2. I'm going to use this gradient and write it here. Now let me write it here. So the new equation will be what? It's going to be, they just want the gradient, so we don't need the equation. So the gradient here is -1/2. Very good. And in this way, I found the gradient of a line which is perpendicular to this one. Now, I can use the same idea here, C, and in B. Let's check B first. Same idea. What's the gradient here? It's -3. The first step is what? I make the negative positive, and then 3 is going to be over 1, and then it's going to be 1/3. I just flip them. So I just flip them, change the sign, and flip them, okay? What about this one? This is the gradient. Because it's negative, it's going to be positive. And because 1 is on top, it's going to be on the bottom, and 2 is going to be on top. So +2 on 1, or +2. And then let's check C. Same idea. This is the gradient, and it's positive, so it's going to be negative here. 2 is on the bottom, I'll make it on top. And 1 on top, I'll make it on the bottom, like this. And this is how you answer a question like this. So finding the gradient of a perpendicular line, I just change the sign of the gradient and flip them. That's it. And if it's a real number, it means it's a number over 1 all the time. So I make 1 on top and the number I'm using in the bottom. And this is how you find a perpendicular line, or an equation of a line which is perpendicular to the equation in the question. And this is how you answer a question like this. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time.